I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on Spotlight, we're exploring the essential guide for young adults. It's called Real World 101, Student Guide. It's written by an outstanding author. His name is Alcott Germany II. This engaging book offers practical advice on turning school subjects into valuable life lessons, empowering students to take control of their futures. Join us right now as we uncover the innovative strategies and thought-provoking dialogue that make this a must-read for young adults everywhere. It's a delightful book. You won't want to miss it. We're so happy to have this author join us once again here today on Spotlight. He's one of my favorites. We thank the folks at Atticus Publishing for helping us put him in the spotlight today. And we ask viewers like you to support authors like him by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing his amazing book. The links are below this interview. Alcott, great to see you here today on Spotlight.
Great to see you, Logan. This is definitely a privilege and an honor to be back on the show, and I'm just excited and stoked to be here.
Well, I'm excited to have you on the show as well. Real World 101, I feel like it's a course that every student needs to take, and they don't get it. They don't know how to balance checkbooks. They don't know how to apply for a mortgage. They don't know how to do many things that are required to live in the adult world beyond geometry and maybe chemistry, right?
Right. Those uh, subjects that we talk about, geometry and chemistry, and they're like, hey, now how is that going to help me, fill out this
Exactly.
W-9, right? And so,
Exactly. And it might help them. They might be a chemist or
right,
they might be, an engineer or something, not to dismiss, are the disciplines in school, but they need to learn some of the practical stuff too. And that's where Real World 101 comes in, right?
100%. And it's really about that correlation, right? I mean, in the book, we do talk about things like calculus and algebra and geometry, not in the way to alienate it, as you just said, but to show that there is a correlation. And sometimes we get so caught up in what's in the text to make certain that we make the grade, right? But when we think about the reason that we go to school, whether it's K-12, whether it's to college, it's to be a contributor to society and to pursue the dreams that you have within you. And that's really the content of this book. And as we talked about before in the past, when you pick up this book and this narrative, it's about having a conversation. When you read it, it's in the context of having a conversation with me versus you having another instructor telling you these are the rules of engagement and do it this way. There's nothing wrong with that, like you said, but you need that practical side to make certain that you get the full worth of your education.
Let's tell the folks at home what the book is about. What will they find between the covers?
Oh, I love talking about this part because it really does open up the essence of it. And it first talks about what ride you're about to be on in the conversation. I call
Mhm.
this excerpt of the book A Letter to Parents. And so for those parents who are looking to get your young adult a read for the summer or a read for any season, it starts off talking about what the conversation is going to be about, where we're looking into mathematics, the arts, science, social studies, and not just let's recall the things that you learn in school or in the classroom, but how these things will apply to the questions that you have, and that the fact that those questions are okay to have. Like I think a lot of times we say, hey, if I ask these questions about well, what's this for, what now, and what next, then that means that I'm not respecting what's being told to me. And it's like, no, these are questions you should have so that we can actually apply these subjects in the ways that actually matter not only to you but to the people you're going to help with that knowledge. And so that in and of itself is the essence of the book, is that we really go through those practical thought provoking steps where
Mhm.
you're really looking at how to apply the content in a way that matters to you, and get some examples, excuse me, along the way that allow you to say, hey, you know what, there is more to this than what I thought, in the classroom, or there is more to what I thought about chapter 3 when I was reading it. And that's what we really try to do in the book, is break down those perceptions and those stereotypes and really turn them into the practical things that, hey, the things that you've been asking about, this is how it does matter to you, and this is how we can apply it.
What are some of the questions that students should be asking when it comes to their schoolwork that you think would be, good responses for them to elicit some good information?
I love it. I love it. Well, let's put ourselves in the, and I actually have a story about this
Okay.
in a very recent example at the LA Festival of Books that I just came from. But
Mhm.
to get back to your question, when a student comes in and they're saying, "Hey, I'm being asked to learn about social studies or and the different events that took place in history," and the question that a student may ask is, "Well, what does this have to do with me? I mean, the Civil War is long gone. The American Revolution is long gone. Well, the events of the Industrial Revolution are long gone." But it's not just about those events, but about the behaviors within those events. And if you think about our current day, social media and all its facets,
Yeah.
it's all about how to engage with people through social studies and understanding history. When we talk about how social media works, it's leveraging social studies in how we behave, the controversial topics that we still talk about pertaining to race and equality and the things that are happening in political offices. These are all things that when you start to take apart the events of social studies, they aren't new events. They're just looked upon differently because new generations are putting their spin on what they're perceiving all those events are for them and for those around them.
Yeah. Perspective is so important.
Mm-hmm.
Context is so important. And that's what, social studies, for example, is giving students. They're
Yeah,
giving them context. When they're learning about civil rights in 2024, they've got to realize what Rosa Parks did in the 1960s.
100%.
And that the 1960s wasn't that long ago because mom and dad might have been born in the 1960s, or at least grandma and grandpa, right?
Exactly, and it's funny you mentioned Roland Park being a native Detroiter. That story does resonate even more to me, and even for those who are interested in things like pop culture and music and the role that music has played, in our society. Those events were key staples in how we were able to provide ourselves a voice as a society in the spaces that led to the events of social studies that we still read about today. And so what we want to do is take those things from the past, learn from them, and then put our perspective on it and allow it to galvanize us to something that we'll definitely be proud of in the future. When you look at the resurgence of Detroit, the
Yeah.
resurgence of Detroit is heavily predicated on learning from the events of the past, going all the way back to the riots, of the 70s and the events that took place in the early 80s. And you see our ability to rise from that took decades. It took decades, but it also took our ability to understand what it means to come out of those moments and come together and look past the differences of the past and turn those differences into in those weaknesses. I'll call them that. I'm a big fan of saying opportunities versus weaknesses, but I'm going to say weaknesses and turning those into strengths. And I think that when you think of the resurgence of Detroit, that is a current event that is happening that totally ties the events that we learn in social studies into what we are looking at as one of the biggest resurgences in our country right now.
And also, looking back to the Industrial Revolution, the advent of the automobile and the fact that it was built primarily in Detroit, Michigan by Ford and GM and so forth,
Yep.
that is what made Detroit such a magnificent city in the day. So
Yeah,
it's great that it is having a resurgence and a renaissance because it's such a great city, it's such a beautiful infrastructure, and it's such a good people that live there.
I love it. When I walk through the city, I've always had the pride of a Detroiter, past, present, but now looking at the future, I'm even more prideful because, and you speak on the automotive revolution that we've read about in the past, and you think about how much technology now is a part of our vehicles. The AI revolution, that's taking place right now, artificial intelligence, all of those things. You now have financial services and technology teams or technology teams, technology companies, Microsoft and Google also building a presence in Detroit. And guess what? We just talked about social studies. Now we're talking about geometry, chemistry,
Exactly,
sciences.
exactly. It's putting all the pieces
It's
together. So this
all
is
the
the dialogue students need to have. Why does it matter? It matters because this is the context of your life. This is where you live. This is what made this city great. This is what can make the city thrive once again.
Couldn't have
So,
said it any better. Couldn't have said it any better. And that's one of the things that I thought was powerful. I'm gonna pivot a little bit to the LA Festival of Books. And one of the
yep.
things that I thought was very heartwarming, Logan, I'm still taken away by it. We go out there. This is one of my first signings ever. This was end of April, and we had a line wrapped around the corner. Um, in the opening hour of this festival, I'm a new author, and there was a ton of parents. I didn't even know this was on the campus of University of USC. We had a ton of parents, students of all ages, and if you go to my website, you'll see photos of it. But there's a student by the name of Jacob, and I'm still blown away by his presence because now he's a USC student. He got the book. He read the book while at the festival and
Wow.
stood in line not for an autograph, but to talk to me about what his dreams and his aspirations were and some advice that he would love to receive on making changes in his future. And he's doing great in his academia, but this book allowed him to think through some questions that he had when he was in high school and now still in college. And so I say that not just to piggyback on what I was talking about earlier and telling you this story, but the question you had pertaining to the connections that students have and the questions that they have and how they're still relevant today and how they actually allow us to form society in the way that we feel will allow it to make it better for ourselves, our children, and our loved ones. And to experience that, I feel like that story, I had to share it because it's just a microcosm of the power of this read that I'm humbled to be able to deliver and the importance of this message to so many young people across the country.
Wonderful that it's having that kind of impact. I'm sure it's very rewarding to you. Talk to me a little bit about how you developed the student-centered learning method
Yeah.
and the impact it's had on students and educators. You just gave me one example with the young man at the book fair, but
Yeah.
tell us about the development of the learning method.
Yeah, student-centered learning. And that's also it's what you just asked actually asked the question where someone's like, how does this even inspire the book? This is actually even how the book was inspired as well,
Right.
where most of the student-centered learning method is all about teaching through the eyes of the student, where instead of you standing in front of the classroom as the expert in the field of whatever the topic is, you're really the one who's learned and you're trying to share what you've learned with others so that you can learn from the people who you're talking with when they apply their perspectives to that. And so the student-centered learning method was something that I was applying as a tutor, because I was tutoring early on in my academia. I was a calculus tutor and a chemistry tutor. And fortunately for me, and I really do take this as a blessing, every student that I've ever tutored has jumped 2 letter grades. And
Wow.
one of the things that I've always said to every student that I've tutored is, I've made every mistake that you think you're going to make. like,
Wait.
and that's the perspective in which I teach from. I don't teach from look at all the things that I was able to retain immediately. I think about all the things that kept me from learning it when trying to get good at it. And when I really focus on the confidence aspect of education, that's what allows my students to be more confident in admitting their vulnerabilities, making the mistakes, understanding that it's okay to make the mistakes. And that's what I've been saying recently, like to a lot of folks, especially about this read. Let's not like alienate anyone who has the question.
Mm.
Embrace the questions. And the student-centered learning method is all about embracing the questions, being okay with failure, and leveraging that failure to make you even stronger, and doing that as a community. And so that's what the student-centered learning method is about, is really sharing your knowledge, failing, as a collective, and learning in that same collective so that by the time you take the exam, you're going in with confidence. You're going in with knowledge and saying, hey, I used to make this mistake. I'm not going to make that again. Because I saw the trap door.
Yep.
and it's allowed for a lot of students to really excel because they're not going in trying to be perfect. They're going in being themselves and embracing what the education that they're being presented with will do for them. And they're going in there being able to put their best foot forward.
Wonderful. It's a great teaching method. I think it's revolutionary in its approach. I think it's going to truly empower students and help teachers facilitate learning
Yeah.
instead of just teaching, which I think is terrific. The name of the book is Real World 101 Student Guide by Alcott Germany II. It is an engaging book that offers practical advice on turning school subjects into valuable life skills, empowering young people to take control of their futures. Alcott, thank you so much for joining us here today on Spotlight.
Thanks for having me back, Logan. This was definitely, again, an honor and a privilege and just an exciting show to be a part of. So thank you again for having me back.
My pleasure. You're one of my favorite guests. You're welcomed anytime. And to the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time, this time until next time on Spotlight.